Good evening. Welcome to the International Community Candidate Forum for Ward 16. At Global Cleveland, we're excited to host this non-political, non-endorsement, community-centered conversation. We look forward to the discussion and the positive momentum for Cleveland's future that it will produce. If English is not your first language, please check the Zoom options bar for the interpretation function. If that option is available, we have live interpreters available. If you click on the tab, you should see an option for languages. Thank you. Before I introduce the candidate, I would like to thank our partners, Asia Inc., Asia Town Cleveland, Badondo Community of Greater Cleveland, British American Chamber of Commerce of Ohio, Building Hope in the City, City Club of Cleveland, Cleveland Council on World Affairs, Council on International Programs USA, Cleveland Cultural Gardens, Collaborative Chamber Alliance, Connecting Cleveland, Downtown Cleveland Alliance, Global Shapers Cleveland, NAACP of Cleveland, Ohio Progressive, Asian Women's Leadership, Refugee Response, Smart Development Inc., Us Together, USCRI Cleveland, and the Young Latino Network. Thank you. Putting this on would have not been possible without you. Now, before I explain the guidelines of this forum, we have a short video from Mo Kantner from our national partner, NAE, the New American Economy.
Hello, and welcome to today's Candidate Forum with Global Cleveland. My name is Mo Kantner, and I'm the Director of State and Local Initiatives at New American Economy. At New American Economy, we're a bipartisan research and advocacy organization that focuses on making the economic case for better immigration policies at the federal, state, and local levels. Now, immigration may feel like an abstract issue debated at the national level through very technical, political, and bureaucratic constraints, and that's partially true, but immigrant integration happens at the local level. How communities attract and welcome newcomers helps lay the foundation for whether a person stays, works, starts a small business, or raises a family. In Cleveland alone, there are over 125,000 immigrants. They pay over $1.3 billion in taxes and help fill workforce needs in healthcare, manufacturing, and other critical industries. They're also over 60% more likely than the US born population to start a small business in Cleveland. They not only help fill workforce needs, they create jobs for other Americans. And that is something that can't be captured at the national level. Those impacts are happening on the ground every day in Cleveland's communities. Our local elected officials have a huge impact on people's day-to-day lives. And when policies are established that let everyone live up to their potential, everybody benefits. So thank you again for participating in this critical conversation, and remember to vote.
Thank you, Mo. Councilman Kazy, since there are no opposing, I'm just going to go over the format. There's going to be about 6 or 7 pre-selected questions, which we'll be able to respond to. After that, we'll open it up for question and answers. So for all the participants, Brian Kazy, councilman, is a lifelong resident of Cleveland, graduated from St. Edward's High School and Bowling Green State University, where he earned a bachelor's degree in sociology. Representing Ward 16, his focus is on community development, job creation, and giving his community voice in setting his agenda. And finally, I'd like to introduce our moderator, Kwame Bachwe. He's a Ghanaian expatriate living and working in Cleveland since 2017, when he moved here to pursue a master's degree at Case Western Reserve University. He's currently the curator of World Economic Forum Global Shapers Cleveland Hub and an impact manager at Cleveland Neighborhood Progress, CDFI Village Capital Corporation, and he now proudly calls himself a Clevelander. So without further ado, I hand it off to Kwame to moderate this forum.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Pat. Good evening, everybody. I am Kwame Bachwe, and I'm going to be the moderator, as Pat just indicated. And thank you so much again, Councilman, for agreeing to spend this time with us this evening. I will kick this off with, some questions, and as the conversation unfolds, we will grant our audience the opportunity to ask some questions as well. So, Councilman, I know you've served at least one full elected term in the ward for which you are serving, and I know you're also very engaged with the community and try to keep that relationship going. I would like to hear from you, just as a starting point, whether or not, you've had interactions with the international community in your ward, and what that experience has been, just serving that community in your ward, or even the community or Northeast Ohio at large.
Okay. Well, again, yes, I'm Councilman Brian Kazy. I thank you all and the partners for the invite and for the opportunity for me to address you guys this evening. I was appointed to Cleveland City Council 2015, where I won the election to fulfill an unexpired term. And then I won my own term in 2017. And now I'm up again for re-election. And fortunately, I'm in the position where I am unopposed. However, forums like this, even though they say they're apolitical, it gives us all an opportunity to get to know each other on a much more personal basis. So I appreciate Global Cleveland for this opportunity. My experience in serving and interacting with the international community is very unique here in Ward 16. I get to represent an area that has the most Nepali immigrants, which is basically new to the area, and the interactions with the Nepalese. And if I get one of these wrong, please correct me so that I can use the correct terms or language. And that's been a great experience. I was able to help open up two Nepali grocery stores, a Nepali clothing store, and I get the ability to represent what I would call a small international village, right? So I represent an area at 130th in Lorraine that has a Hispanic St. Jude's Botanical, which is like a small statue religious store that's ran by a lady of Hispanic descent. I get to represent two Arabic grocery stores, an Italian ethnic restaurant, a German restaurant, a Himalayan restaurant, and just a plethora of other businesses that are owned by people who of ethnic descent. And I can tell you that I can just tell you today when the lady who owns the Hispanic store was having some problems with the city, and she called me, and I couldn't understand a word she was saying because she was so upset and excited over having a visitor from the city who wanted her to change a sign. There was this ethnic barrier, a language barrier that we had to overcome. And the one thing that we couldn't do is we couldn't do it over the phone, right? So I actually had to get up and go out and visit her at her store. And by the time we were done talking, we were able to calm her down and set her on the right direction and in the right path. Just, every day, in this position, especially dealing with immigrants who are new to the community. It's how do we get what we would consider your average normal Joe Clevelander to coincide with, to get to know not only the people, but their culture. Prime example of that was in 2018, we had a family come in and they were renting a house on a street that's relatively quiet. And it's full of just, it's not too ethnically diverse. And this family did not understand American culture. And sorry about that. Didn't understand American culture. So one of the things that we had to do was integrate the cultures that are different on the street on this to get individuals to know each other in a more personal manner in order for everybody to understand the culture of what's going on. So I've had a number of dealings with that. And I'm sorry if I was going too long.
No, that's okay. I think you've touched on a couple of the other themes that we have that we'll be talking about tonight as well. I'm just, really curious, has some of these experiences, just shaped your understanding of your own community as it intersects with these international newcomers? and also just as your role as a leader in the community.
Absolutely, and I want to go back to that one story that I had when this family had all their clothes hanging on, a line in the front yard, and all their shoes were sitting out in the front yard. And when I went to go visit this, because we were getting complaints from neighbors, when I knocked on the door, they invited me in. They had no furniture, right? And they didn't even know what a washer and dryer was, because they were from a small village where they were not accustomed to the normalcy of America. And by the time we were done dealing with them, it was actually the neighbors who were helping them out with getting them furniture, teaching them how to properly wash clothes, teaching them how to interact with other neighbors with the language barrier.
Okay, so Councilman, you touched on entrepreneurship in the area and how you supported the opening of at least 2 Nepali grocery stores. All over Cleveland itself, we know that there are over 1,000 immigrant entrepreneurs in the area. And we know that there's 30%, 38% more likely to be entrepreneurs than they are more likely to be entrepreneurs than the US born residents. How will how will you specifically as a council person work with the next administration in City Hall to ensure that immigrant entrepreneurs receive the opportunities that they need to grow and scale through the Economic Development Office and other city programs?
Well, one thing that we need to do is, and sometimes it's an obstacle that not many people think of, because we can say as a whole that Cleveland is very welcoming, right? But we also know that when it comes down to the nitty-gritty, that we need to have more individuals more welcoming to people who are immigrants. And yeah, everybody says immigration and we need to bring more people in, but then do you really want them living next door to you, right? So what we need to do is we need to even break that down, not on a citywide level, but even more so in a neighborhood level and on a street level. So what we need to do is we need to begin to educate people on how to be more welcoming when it's even closer to home and not just on a citywide basis. As far as the economic, all right, it says my internet connection is unstable, so it should kick back on. But if I could go on to the entrepreneur, receive opportunities through economic development, I have the privilege of representing the 25% of the city's industrial industry, and economic development by offering small grants and loans to immigrants who want to come in and open their own business. That's something that we should look at and at a wider city level, but it's also making sure that the immigrants who do arrive, if they're not the individual who wants to open their own business or something, but making sure that we employ them through programming through the city.
Okay, I think that's very well said. So you talked briefly about attracting immigrants and asked the very critical question of, will people be willing to have an immigrant family live by them? And we know that Cleveland has a population loss problem. And there's been a lot of the stabilization that we've seen in the population here has been from immigrants. So do you have some specific ideas on how, as a community, we can attract more immigrants to move here and to continue the important trend that we are seeing of having more immigrants willingly relocate here, or even retain international students that are funneling through the space?
So it's all about opportunity, right? So we need to make sure that as a city as a whole, that we're providing the correct opportunities or the best opportunities that we can, especially in maintaining our college graduates, right? I mean, we have a great educational system here in this, not only in the city of Cleveland, but Northeast Ohio. But we need to make sure that we retain them by again, being more welcoming, right? And by doing that, we need to work with, higher ups and CEOs and CFOs of big businesses to make sure that we don't let our talent pool drain just based on where somebody was born. Yeah, I think we're back to a population loss. I'm reading here and.
Yes, I'm asking, so I'm not going in the direct order. I'm trying to make the conversation flow naturally. So as your responses go, I ask the questions accordingly. So yes, we are talking about population loss and how can we attract more immigrants in the area?
Well, one is opportunities. And by that, we mean opportunities for education and opportunities for employment. We know that a lot of our immigrants, we can offer so much more than their homelands could offer them. So, we need to do a better job of marketing the city of Cleveland and what we offer, as well as neighborhoods, right? I know that, the Naples community has, migrated to Ward 16. And what we're doing is we're working with current owner investment property owners to how do I say this the correct way? So we're working with a lot of our current landlords to assure that immigrants are part of their selection process. And even though there may be a language or even a writing deficiency or barrier that's there, we're starting this whole new process of reaching out to immigrants for stable housing. That's one of the ways that we're going to be able to attract. If people know that they're going to be able to come here, they're going to have an opportunity for a small business or even employment, and they're going to be able to maintain stable housing. That's going to be a big part of keeping and attracting immigrants.
So, Councilman, as our communities are getting more and more diverse, right? And we are having more some of niche communities emerging. Would you and how would you support adding new members and staff to the community relations board that represent the changing immigrant population here? Such as, for instance, the African immigrant community liaison or an Arab immigrant community liaison, or another demographic that is specific to your ward. Also, how would you and would you support adding some new members and staff to that board?
I would definitely support adding new board members that represent Cleveland better as a whole. One of the things that and I know that Global Cleveland even helped me with this is the language barriers, right? When somebody comes over, and I'll be honest with you, I was as naive about Nepalese individuals as there could be, right? Until they migrated towards 16. And one of the big things was the language barrier and how do we better communicate with them? We need to have people on board, who are able to help us with that language barrier. So of course, I would always advocate for a more diverse community relations board.
Thank you. If anyone has any questions, please go ahead and put it in the chat or in the Q&A. As we continue the conversation. So I'm going to keep going. So, Councilman, we know that, the new Biden-Harris administration has been making some immigration changes. And one of those is specifically related to the refugee community. So we know there will be, more arrivals, and it's estimated that, there will be 3 to 4 times as many families coming into the city. How do you plan to open Cleveland up for these new residents and provide these newcomers with the opportunity to contribute to the city?
Well, again, it comes back to opportunity and jobs, right? I mean, we know currently right now, and I know it because of the phone calls that I get, we know that we are having a shortage of people who actually work, right, in this country. And with the phone calls that I receive from businesses, it's how do we get them to open their doors more to immigrants? you know, and as far as coming up with new ideas for to attract more, thank God we got a global Cleveland, right? Because, you know, this is something that's, you know, is much bigger than any one council person or even bigger than a council. And, you know, if it wasn't for, you know, the global Clevelands or even our educational system in the Cleveland area, I don't know how you would go about attracting more immigrant. I would be at a loss, and I'm just being totally honest with you there. So it's working with, you know, with all of the different immigrant organizations as well as Global Cleveland to come up with the best way for the city of Cleveland to attract and to maintain. I don't have those answers, and I'm just being honest with you, but I also rely on other outside entities to guide me in that.
Okay, I think that speaks to the important work that Global Cleveland organizations like these are doing. There's a question in the chat from Elizabeth. What is your biggest challenge in helping international residents in your ward?
It's the language. I'm just going to be honest with you. It's getting out. Okay, so I'll just use the term Americans or Clevelanders to understand the culture of immigrants, and it's also getting the immigrants to understand the culture of Americans, right? So, and a lot of that challenge comes from language barriers.
That is completely understandable. You know, as an immigrant myself, I know that cultural understanding and cultural sharing comes when there's interaction. Have you been able to, or do you foresee, you know, being able to create opportunities for some of these newcomers and, you know, Cleveland, you know, natives to interact and begin to, you know, foster some of that cultural sharing?
Yes, and actually our CDC is in the process. We're actually working with the Nepalese community to, for them to put on their first cultural fair that I believe is planned for September. And I don't know if my screen is frozen or not, but I don't know if you can still hear me.
No, yeah, good, you can hear you.
But part of that not only is encouraging the Nepalese to come and enjoy their, you know, to celebrate their culture and their heritage, but it's also, we're going to use it as an opportunity to educate other residents on the culture of the Nepalese community. So we've already kind of got that. We're a little step ahead, just because we're working with them to secure their first cultural fair or festival or whatever it is that they want to call it. But part of that, when I was approached to see if I would help do that, part of that was yes, but we've got to make sure that we don't throw a fair or a festival, especially if we're going to have it in the park, and it just be for Nepalese people. We need to make sure that. What's that?
No, I'm saying completely understood. And for clarity, the CDC you are mentioning is the Bel Air Praetors Development Corporation for the benefit of those on the call. Okay.
Yes.
It's
not only right. It's not only celebrating the culture, but it's also, we're going to use it as an educational tool and piece for other residents.
Councilman, I think we have time for one more question. If anybody wants to ask a question, I will take it. If not, I would ask my final question and we can, you know, move to wrap this up. Okay, it doesn't seem like we have a question in the chat. So Councilman, again, I moved here to Cleveland as a student originally, and I've seen many of my international students come through and also leave. The question that I have for you is, how do we, you know, enact policies in City Council to ensure that we are doing as much as we can to retain this influx of international students that are coming and going?
So if I could turn that question around on you, Kwame.
Yes.
And ask you why you stayed, what attracted you, and, you know, first of all, what could we do better, right? So I'm born and raised in Cleveland, right? So we can enact all kinds of policies and procedures and make sure this and that, but we got to do it the right way, right? We got to make sure that we're reaching out to individuals from a plethora of different countries. So if I could ask you, what did we do right to get Kwame to stay in Cleveland?
I think I'm a bit of an outlier in that case because I've definitely had the support with organizations like Global Cleveland, and I've made some really good friends here who have, made it possible for me to remain in this city. But I do think a starting point would be actually going forth and talking to international students as a whole. I'm not going to pretend to be a spokesperson for all of them. But I do think that, going on and speaking to them directly and having a way for City Council to engage this demographic would be the way to go. And having said that, Councilman, I will, I think that's all the time that we have for today's forum. So I would thank you very much for spending this time with us and graciously answering all the questions that I've thrown at you this evening. And I will give you 30 seconds if you have any closing remarks before I close this out.
Kwame, what you just said there was I think a key point to this, right? It's educating people on Cleveland, and we as Clevelanders and we as local representatives need to do a better job of listening. And one of the things when you were talking, I just thought of is, boy, how would I try to sell Cleveland if I was sitting in a classroom full of immigrants who are on the verge of either going or staying? And a lot of that's going to have to come from them telling us, right? We need to get the feedback. We can't be top down. It's got to be from the bottom up. So we need to do a better job of engaging with immigrants as to why they would want to stay, what they would need to stay. And then it's our job to enact that. So it's all about communication and reaching out and education.
Thank you so much, Councilman Brian Kazy. Thank you everyone for attending this forum with Ward 16 candidate, councilperson candidates. We have other forums that are going to be running. And as a reminder, we invite you to, look out for the announcements for the other forums that are coming up. And we endeavor that you would, come out and join us and have more of these conversations. You can find the answers to the questions from, candidate, from Councilman Kazy on the, website. And we would also like to especially thank you, the audience, for coming. It is your vote that determines the next generation of who is going to be in the city of Cleveland leadership. And thank you to the we didn't have any interpreters here today, but for the other forums we've had, so we want to extend a special thanks to them. But we also want to thank our incredible sponsors and partners, without whom these forums would not be possible. So special thanks to Asia Inc., Asia Town Cleveland, Badondo Community of Greater Cleveland, the British American Chamber of Commerce of Ohio, Building Hope in the City, the City Club of Cleveland, the Cleveland Council on World Affairs, Council on International Programs USA, the Cleveland Cultural Gardens, Collaborative Chambers Alliance, Connecting Cleveland, Downtown Cleveland Alliance, Global Shapers Cleveland, the NAACP of Cleveland, Ohio Progressive Asian Women's Leadership, Refugee Response, Smart Development Inc., Us Together, USCRI Cleveland, and the Young Latino Network. All of these organizations perform wonderful work with and for our international community. Please find them on social media and on the web to learn more about the work that they do. And again, thank you all so much for spending this time with me and with the councilman. Have a good evening. And remember, we strengthen our city by welcoming the world.